I certainly feel that we have an obligation to our future generations to deal with this crisis in the best way we can right now.
December 2019. News comes from Wuhan, China, about an alarming novel strain of coronavirus. What we now know as COVID-19 starts spreading, and nations worldwide enforce quarantines and lockdowns. While the world enters crisis mode, a group of filmmakers across the globe grabs their cameras to capture the lives and stories around them. Sharing these stories, they realize, even before COVID-19, we had equally virulent diseases dividing us. Perhaps this virus might be a test for humanity, a wake-up call for change. Filmmakers and storytellers from 22 countries unite in a shared goal to tell the story of a time for healing. This is Sanatione.
Currently, collectively, we are not doing enough to combat climate change.
The overall response to climate change is woefully inadequate. I have to be quite frank with you. We really need an all-in approach. Everything from the circular economy to dealing with, here in California, our very carbon-intensive transportation systems. Our response is inadequate.
I think the overall response to climate change right now is a great start. We're really seeing it, especially in the younger generations who are really taking charge for political action, as well as, building local community. However, we're gonna need a lot more people and a lot of other different sectors to really go all in.
Would you be a volunteer to carry these seeds through one more year, though you'll never see them grow tall on the hill?
We have to think about, what are we willing to sacrifice? How are we going to be able to get to a circular economy where we reuse before we even go to recycle or buy something new?
We certainly won't be able to live with what we consider the standard of living that we have now. Some of that is actually, I think, could represent an improvement because our standard of living has brought a lot of separation and alienation and a lot of consumption that doesn't actually make us happy. But there will also be a lot of suffering, particularly people who are less privileged, who don't have as many resources.
I don't want us to get 10 years from now or 20 years from now and people all of a sudden to see climate change as a drastic issue and, only then start to think about what we can do to stop it, because we need to start now. It's going to take, a shift in everything that we do, whether that's on an individual level, whether that's our social structure, whether that's laws that the government puts into place.
We need an economic system that is specifically geared to taking care of people and planet, and not about maximizing profit at all costs. So there's all kinds of implications when you take solving climate change to a logical conclusion. Our economy has to change, companies have to change, government has to change.
If you are of the older generation, even if the effects of climate change are not going to be that bad for you or they're not going to affect you, you still owe it to your kids and your grandkids and future generations to stop it.
Many of us quote the 7 generations of the various Native Americans has been attributed to thinking of how we should be protecting the earth. In terms of future generations, 7 generations is my children, my children's children, their children's children, and on for 7 generations. I feel like we owe those full 7 generations and then beyond, but those full 7 generations.
It is 100% going to affect us. It's going to affect every generation after us.
I think we should make absolutely every effort to drastically reduce our carbon emissions.
To use far less energy than we currently use.
I think that's why it's really important for young generations to pay attention, for people to go out and vote, that we can put more pressure on government and our lawmakers to help adopt more policies and strategies for helping us to minimize and mitigate carbon emissions and ultimately reduce the impacts of climate change.
And I think everyone can get involved in that. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but the easiest thing is to get involved with one of these organizations that's already around you. And if you can't do that, it's not that hard to make your own. We don't really have the option to fail, so we need to do everything physically possible to stop climate change. And that's going to be a huge undertaking, and it's going to be changing everything that we know.
The most important thing for us to do differently is to join with other people in taking action.
The impossible is possible in a moon's eye.
But we can reverse it. We do have the capacity to turn it around. We have the history of having turned it around. We have the New Deal was a collective effort.
Many past generations have demonstrated that when people come together and people work together, that they can make a difference. Really trying to push the fishing industry to change their practices so that they weren't killing dolphins in their catches, that had a profound impact.
I think it's really important to emphasize the power of collective action and how doing these simple things that really can add up make a big difference. I think it's also really important, especially in areas where there maybe isn't consensus on climate change, is to not come from a place of judgment.
Looking at it from a political lens and understanding where governments have moved from competition and conflict and toward collaboration and working together on a solution rather than fighting is the best way for us to move forward.
I don't believe it's too late. I think that it's never too late to try to change the trajectory that we're on. As a kid, I was really passionate about helping to save the rainforest, and so I decided that I would go down the path of biology. The work I did for my PhD focused on tropical forest restoration.
I had no idea how to organize these actions, but I found people who cared about this issue, and now I'm part of an organization that's working on a ton of things.
I am doing most of my climate activism through music. Music is a way that I've found that you can reach people's hearts.
I decided to pretty much dedicate my life to trying to help save the planet and help save the environment.
I consider myself a climate practitioner.
I got myself involved in writing about climate, and that's my journey.
When choosing a career, I felt like I couldn't do anything else but dedicate my whole life to trying to combat climate change and build community resilience. I've been able to work with people really on the front lines of climate impacts, farm workers who are working in extreme heat. We are pushing for more democratic and involved processes in things like city planning and city budgeting, because those things are going to impact how our city deals with climate change and how prepared we're going to be and how the city can best serve their residents.
Policy sounds distant and far away until you start looking at, wow, what is my city doing? What is my neighborhood doing? What are the policies that actually have an effect? I have the potential to know someone who's actually making those decisions.
Here in the city of Santa Cruz and being on the Santa Cruz City Council, one of the things that's been really encouraging is how much and how often the city is really trying to address climate change impacts.
We are lucky here in Santa Cruz to be surrounded by a lot of people who feel that being mindful of your carbon footprint, being mindful of where your food comes from, how we treat the land, is the right thing to do.
Throughout history, I think a lot of the most creative and radical and useful change has been motivated or led by young adults and young people.
Just walking in the streets, marching with thousands of people, hearing other young people come forward and say they care about this just gave me a lot of hope for the future.
Other ways we are connecting with the community is a lot through youth. So we really want to build pathways for leadership for young people. We do this through holding monthly support groups for young activists. We mentor students through the local universities.
I've heard stories of young people who have gotten their grandparents to change their practices or got their parents to change the way that they live. And oftentimes when they do that, the people who've made those changes feel that they've made their lives better.
I think everyone should be a climate activist.
Everybody can make a difference, and it's never too late to start today.
One of the things that the pandemic has shown us is that change is not only necessary, it's possible. We've been able to make tremendous changes locally and globally because we've had to. And so now, anyone who says we can't make big changes is just flat out wrong.
Maybe love was never made for a place like this, where the future's hidden in the palm of a tightened fist. Maybe it's by sleight of heart, maybe like a child we start. I think she's up there somewhere, dancing beyond the mist. Would you give up Hawaii if I give up my car? Would we give up our little spot where we watch the world from afar? Would you be a volunteer to carry these seeds through one more year, though you'll never see them grow tall on the hill? But a moon as eyes will.